This is a series of octophonic events, sort of listening sessions / concerts, sometimes installations, sometimes roundtables, sometimes artist talks. We do it here in Vienna, and there's going to be a program for 2 months. So we started yesterday, today is the second day. I'm very happy that Daniel is here with us right now, because as Boris said, it's a great chance to have not just a great composer and a great specialist, and in the spheres of not just composing but also curating and creating and making things happen, but also one of the best in that case, the communicator. I hope that more or less, together with the hands-on Acousmonium workshops of the guys, you are quite in the material. Before I would ask Daniel to give an overview, why should you really transfer the ideas and the technology of Acousmonium into the fields?
So, good morning, everybody. Very happy to see very young people. That's good. That was probably the intention we had with Anton when we started, is to develop in the younger generations the love for sound, the love for listening, which is what mainly moves me. I love listening, and part of my life has been to get sounds around and put them together to build something that for our ears becomes music, and for your ears. I think that the first and the best intention we had was to create links. Links not only with composers from France and Austria, but to create links among composers themselves. You know, composers are very lonely people. They have a little room where they work, they're always alone, and they tend not to communicate much among them. The best communicational moment for a composer is when he is studying, when he has a professor, and the professor more or less does this kind of exchange among the students. But once you stop studying, you're all alone on the world. Nobody helps you. Nobody talks to you. Nobody talks about music. Nobody tells us anything really constructive about your music. Oh, very nice, Anton, very nice word, thank you. Sorry, I have to go, there's a train leaving in 10 minutes. That's more or less the exchange among composers. So to create a moment in which composers can meet, can see what other people think, can ask questions, is really a unique situation for everybody. Personally, I witnessed how year after year, the young composers were getting stronger, made better music, longer musics. They developed new languages for their own music. And I think that the big success is to have a place where young people can meet, can work, can listen to what other people do. My work is not, I won't say it's important or not important, but I have been composing for 50 years. But when you start, it's a very difficult situation. You have to encounter the world. You have to open yourself to other people. So they listen to your music and they listen who you are internally. So this is why an encounter like this one has been such a wonderful event.
Honestly, I felt really a little bit odd that it is really the right place for the Acousmonium, because my impression was that there's your fantastic JRM group and studio, and then there are, so for me it was very strongly related to the existing technology with the existing music history and the existing facilities. I was really touched and I was really impressed when you actually assured us in the opposite, that we should go into the territories and we should bring it to somewhere where it does not exist. It was there in the sort of art studio, art room, and then you call it...
Exactly. Musical halls were built for a specific music situation, which is a situation in which there's a scene with the musicians, and then there's an audience with the listeners. Well done theater, the scene has a certain reverberation to concentrate the sound on the listeners, and the listening space is a very dry space. This is not an ideal environment for loudspeakers. I prefer much more to have an empty place with a kind of neutral acoustics. Of course, the less reverberation you have, the best you can work, and then to build up the sound in the place. So, for me, the best concerts are not in theaters and improbable places. We have often made concerts in Germany in factories, because there's a tradition in Germany to use factories to make music, or in Black Cube. So for me, it's really a very nice place, because the acoustics don't interfere too much with the positioning of the loudspeakers. And so you can build up the sound of the place and make it sound as you like. You're not dependent upon already existing acoustics. We often say that in acousmatic music, there are 3 spaces. The first space is the space that is around the sounds you use. Every sound has a space around, environment. Even if it's an electronic sound, it has a specific electronic space. So when we put sounds together, we're putting different spaces together. Then we do that in a second space, which is the studio. The studio has its own space. We have stereo, in which we locate sounds in space, or we have 8 tracks. We put sounds in different spaces. And then these 2 spaces come to the third space, which is the concert hall, which has its own space, and it interacts with the spaces that are within the music. So the less the concert hall interferes, the more transparent your music will be. Many details that you put in your music may disappear in a certain concert hall. For example, here we are in a little room with 8 loudspeakers, with quite a dry acoustics, and this is a special place for, let's say, chamber music. We wouldn't put an orchestra here. We would put a piano and a singer and a flute and a guitar. So the same thing happens with acousmatic music. It's a reduced environment, and there's music that runs very well in these kind of places, and which becomes very difficult to perform in large spaces. I have played in little places like this, or in halls with 1,500 seats, and it's really, your music is like a chewing gum. It has to stretch to cover all that space. Of course, you need the loudspeakers, the energy, because you have to fill up the space with sound. And always looking for 2 things: the clarity, that all the sounds that are in the music, everybody can listen to them. And then if you need strength, it has to be a very precise strength, with no saturations, with no deformations that can be brought when you put sounds very loudly up. So it's all a very delicate game of adapting your music to the environment. And sometimes you have to make efforts, like putting loudspeakers near the audience, just to conceal the acoustics of the hall.
But this is also how you make a movement of the sound.
For example, when I come here to this room and I have to play my music, or go there and play my music, and I have an Acousmonium, the first thing I do is not to try to do things and movements and put the sound here and there. It's just listen how my music, which I know perfectly, sounds in that space. What are the good things about the space and the less good things? And how should I modify certain things? For example, some halls can bring up certain frequencies in your music which are not wanted. So you have to equalize in order to eliminate those frequencies or to lower them down so you can get a pure spectrum of your music. So the first thing is to listen to how the music you know so well, which is your music, sounds in the place. And then decide what you could do with the loudspeakers you have around and how you could perform.
So since we we just came to this issue, you started with giving the suggestions in a way that you comment with your personal experience that first thing you do there. So I would really maybe I want to ask you: is there some kind of general suggestion for somebody who just starts to trying their hands on Acousmonium practice?
There are many different, let's not call them rules, but ways of acting. It also depends. There are two situations. Are you performing your own music or are you performing somebody else's music? If you're performing your own music, that's a bit easier because you know every millisecond of it. If it's somebody else's music, you should make some kind of preparation. Listen to the music, maybe make a drawing of the music. Visualizing the music helps you a lot to memorize it. Put it in a paper, draw it, or with a computer, whatever. Let's start with a simple case where you're performing a stereo piece. A stereo piece was composed in a studio where there were two loudspeakers and you, or a headphone and you in the middle. So the first thing is do that in the hall. Open two loudspeakers that are more or less in a triangle so you can reproduce the studio situation and listen how your music sounds there. And try to not there's a problem, let's say, that often you listen to the, when you're performing, you're listening to the music and not how the music sounds in the hall, which is a totally different thing. You concentrate on the music itself. The music itself is there, it's already done. But how it sounds is a different thing. So the difficulty is listening how it sounds, not how it is. Once you have listened, it doesn't have to be very long, some minutes of it, or some moments of the music which have some particular energy or are very dim. Then you start seeing how that music sounds on other loudspeakers. While doing this, I don't know how many tracks you have there now, but let's suppose you have, I don't know, 8 or 16 tracks. There's a very slow learning, which is to create a relation between the faders and the loudspeakers. So I want those loudspeakers, these faders, and I don't have to look at the mixing desk. I want those one there, this fader. I'll not be there all the time. When you're looking down on the mixing desk, you're not listening. When you see experienced performers perform, they don't look at the mixing desk. They have their head up. Why? Because they are listening. Of course, it's not easy at all to get some kind of automatism. That's why many people put a red strip or a white strip or something so they can very quickly find where the faders are. And then you shouldn't try to make very rigid performances. I have seen people that say, okay, from the instant 0 to 1 minute, I will open this, and then at 45 seconds, these 4. Okay, it can work. It can be very effective. But you never have enough time to integrate that as a performance. It's like playing any instrument. I mean, you need, okay, to learn the score, and then to integrate the movements that permit you to perform that. I tend to concentrate in certain moments of the work. At 2 minutes after something that was pianissimo, there's a very strong sound coming in, very abruptly. So that's a transition. That transition is very difficult. So I will practice that transition, and the next transition, and the fortissimo, and the pianissimo. When it's very low, where do I put it? I put it near the audience, I put it far away from the audience. I can play with that, or I can move it around. So if you write a score, the music, it's better to put like general indications. Oh, a red arrow, be careful here. There's a risk, because there are risks. The great risk is always when you push too much the loudspeakers, which may bring first a deformation of the sound by the loudspeakers, and then you may have half of the audience doing this because you went too loud. So you see, I used to be a pianist, and the key in performing the piano is not practice, it's not reading, it's listening. Listening meaning analyzing what you do, listening to what you do, and then interacting with what you listen to, and modifying, trying different things. Another example, you have this model that's 60 years old called stereophonic sound. So left, right, I'm in the middle. Well, when I perform in a place like this, I totally break that down. I will put left there and right back there. So actually I'm doing like a plane. Or I can put left there and right back there, and then change it the other way around. This creates interesting movements. Or try to put everything on only one loudspeaker, or leave only one loudspeaker open. There is a tendency, I have seen too often, to open all the faders. And then a little movement here, a little movement here. I close all the faders, and then open them one after the other, trying to do it in such a way that when one goes up, the other one goes down, and you can't listen to that change of position. It's all a question of practice. Nobody is born knowing how to do everything. You have to practice until you learn. So it's very good if you are doing a workshop to work with short 2-3 minute long pieces, because then you can play them many times and try many different things until you finally decide one, and then you're open to improvisation during the performance. The first action is to find your music. There's a question I want to make. Each one of you are playing their own music? Seems like. So the first thing is to, I don't know, try with 2 loudspeakers, 4 loudspeakers, 6, not many. And okay, this here is how this is my music. I'm finding it. It sounds as I know it. It doesn't sound differently. If you put your music through a subwoofer only, you won't recognize it. So you open. Okay, all the frequencies are there, the high frequencies, the low frequencies. The low frequencies are not too loud, get an equilibrium. That's the main thing. The main thing is to transmit the music as you hear it, as you know it, as you made it. Then, after that first situation, well, it can be only that, huh? Then try to do different things. Try to enhance your music. Try to give more distance, openness, closeness. Try different situations. Explore, experiment, as Anton would say. Different situations. Then decide how you're going to. So let's see that there should be 3 stages. First stage, no, there are 4 stages then. First stage, I try to identify where the loudspeakers are. What are these two? Okay, this one, okay, this one, okay, this one. It's a recognition that you can do with any sound. Then once you're there in front of the Acousmonium with your music, then you try to make it sound as you know it. You try to say, okay, this is my music. Listen, this is how I made it. Then you stop that and you start, let's say, fooling around, playing with the Acousmonium. Let's try only one loudspeaker over there. No, nobody will criticize you. Don't worry about critics. Don't worry about what other people think. What is important is what you think, how you feel, how you listen to your music. You're the owner of it, even if it's not your music. The moment you're performing, it's yours. So you can do with it whatever you want. So just use that moment to experiment, to try different things. And then, after a certain amount of time, you decide what are you going to do during, let's say, public presentation, during the concert. You draw out your conclusions. Either is a very calm performance in which you concentrate in reproducing your sound intentions. There are people that just play around all the time, they change the what. But please, don't open all the faders at the same time. Because the Acousmonium is not a question of energy. There's 10 times more energy in the Acousmonium than the energy needed to reproduce the music. The Acousmonium, if you have 8 loudspeakers, means you have 8 possibilities. You have 16 possibilities, different. So if you open all, okay, it's like just putting the radio on.
The noise music.
Yeah, the noise music as I used to do in my young days.
And but in the meanwhile, I also want to ask that as you witnessed the evolution of the Acousmonium. Of course, not all of it. Some of it you've heard from the history that Pierre Schaeffer would put some. I mean, you're actually kind of coming closer when you're saying that we put from 2 speakers, one here, one there, and then I mean, I think we could really sort of trace the formation and the evolution of the Acousmonium from Pierre Schaeffer Quadro. That there were 2 on the stage and 2 on the back, but 1 on the top, 1 on the bottom. So this is you haven't seen, you have heard about that. But I mean, you came over at some point. So how did it look like when you came?
Yeah, there was a big difference
To what we have now.
To what we have now. The big difference, and the big difference is not only in the Acousmonium, is in everyday listening, is the quality of loudspeakers. I remember when I started playing in the Acousmonium, that was at the end of the 70s. The Acousmonium was a set of lousy loudspeakers. And there were only 2 or 4 that had really a good presence. So you had to concentrate in having the music running on those 2 or 4 loudspeakers and then making some kind of special effects with the other one.
Why lousy? Is it because Jerem had no money? Or?
No, because loudspeakers in those days were not as good as today. I mean, the loudspeaker you have, I don't know if you can see a loudspeaker there, but they're 100 times better than what existed 50 years ago. Of huge boxes. but the sound was not precise. The energy relations were not good. And then there were many experimental loudspeakers, which JRM used to have and still has in some deposits. And also music was mainly stereophonic or monophonic even. So little by little, it has been changing, and the Acousmonium today is really a jewel. The precision, the quality of the loudspeakers is unique. It's wonderful to play with it. Now, the first time you put your hands on it, you may really be afraid or scared. And the question one asks oneself is, am I doing this the right way?
Yeah, because there are dictators around who will always criticize you.
No, not even that. Not even, yes, there are dictators around, but you think that there's a certain method or way of doing it. No, it's what I'm telling you. Just do what you feel. As long as what you listen is really pleases you. You're happy with what you're listening to. Whatever, only if you open one loudspeaker all around the concert, for me it's fine. It's a decision. Like making music is decision making. I take this sound and I decide to put it with this sound on top of that. So I perform, I decide I put the sounds in this loudspeaker or this loudspeaker. Of course, the first time is a very scary moment. I don't know if some of you have been here in the past, but the second time is really much more easier. You feel more at ease.
I would actually ask you, I mean, how many of you have been to the previous editions?
1, 2, okay.
Right
Okay,
on
the one in the front, okay.
So it's a kind of fresh beginning for the majority.
Good.
Great.
So the two people will feel a little bit more confident. Or no? Do you feel confident or you're still afraid? No, she said no. But you're almost an expert now. I would say performance should be a pleasure. That's not easy to enjoy. And performing is a little bit like composing. You compose for yourself. Of course you think of other people. But the main listener when you compose, you are the main listener. And if the composition works, it's because you are a listener as other people are listeners. A composer is the first audience. And you can make the difference when you're working in your computer or whatever you're composing, and then at a certain moment you take distance and you say, now I'm going to listen to what I did. Oh, it's fine. Oh, no, it's horrible. And there you're acting as a listener. So when you're performing, you're always acting as a listener. And you're the main listener because you're the one that knows the music the best. And here's another recommendation. When you're performing, don't start analyzing your music. Oh, this sound is not good. Oh, this sound is not good. Because that will interfere in your performance. Forget the composition. It's finished. You can't do anything now. So now you start performing. You start listening how the music sounds in the hall. And of course, you're always taking into account the other listeners. For example, when I rehearse, I have a very, let's say, symphonic music. Sometimes during the rehearsal, I put the sound at the maximum. I love it, but I will never do that during the concert. I will bring that down because it may be too loud for many people. So that's what I say. You are the first listener. You're the first analyzer of how it sounds. You're the only one who can say, okay, what you listen to is what I composed. And you're listening in a very good way. So your decisions are the good ones. The bad decisions are not making anything, just opening and staying there without doing anything.
Well, I mean, then I asked Daniel another question, and it's a very practical question.
Yes.
Because you're about to start, and usually, like the first thing, when you begin to practice it, and the first thing you notice that it's never enough time. It's never enough time to learn, to analyze, and to enjoy your piece, and to get it ready for the performance for the beginning. And it's never enough if you come to the festival. Yeah. So your piece is probably 20 or 40 minutes long altogether, and you only have 1 hour for the check. And it's the same for everybody. And everybody is getting very, very, very disappointed.
How much time do they have, each of them?
But it doesn't matter how much time they have, it's still never enough, right?
Yeah, probably, yeah.
And I mean, the last festival we had a kind of sort of a scandal because some people were really angry that
there wasn't enough time, yeah. So,
what to do?
What to do? That's life. No, that's what I say. Try to find your music. Try to readapt it to the space. First of all, be sure that the music can be listened the way you want it to be listened. So that's 2 or 3 times you play it, and then it will be, you get already a good vision of that. And then start trying things. Start fooling around. Spend 10 minutes doing whatever, just to get some fluidity with your hands, with the movements, to listen to how the sound sounds in a place or in another. So the location of the loudspeaker is very important. If it's near you, the acoustics don't intervene. If it's far away from you at the high corner, the acoustic of the hall will intervene. So there are many differences. So, I mean, I have made catastrophic concerts in which I had a new piece and had only 10 minutes to rehearse because there was a technical problem and something didn't work or something broke or things like that. That's why I say that's life. And well, if it happens to you the first time, it can be very discouraging. But well, once, yeah.
And what to do if you're in the process of doing a concert and it's turning catastrophic?
You stop. You stop immediately. Everybody understands there's a problem. It's not your fault. It's some fault. So you stop, you say, excuse me, there's a problem. Somebody will try to find out the problem. If there's no solution, then you start again and you try to find a way around the problem. It depends what kind of problem. If it's a very small problem, like a loudspeaker not working, or it's all of a sudden the computer. And there's no shame in doing that. It's a professional attitude. The same thing happens to a violin player. A chord breaks. He will not continue. He will stop, say, excuse me, I'm going to change the chord, and then continue with the concert or start it again. So it's not your problem. It's a problem of the environment. Let the environment solve the problem. If it can't, we also have stopped concerts because of problems. End of the concert. Sorry, there's a huge problem. The computer broke down. There's no way of fixing it. See you some other time. So we are in a small room where you can put about 25 people, and it's surrounded with 8 identical loudspeakers, Genelec speakers. And well, we started yesterday. We had a round table about the concept of experimental music. And then I'm sitting in the middle in a very low chair with a little mixing desk with the control of the 8 channels. Actually, I'm not performing at all. I'm just controlling the general level. It's like a compression because loud sounds tend to sound too loud here. And low sounds, you have to bring it sometimes a little bit up. So it's more an equilibrium making. So we had a concert yesterday for 1 hour long, and then the music, there's like an automatic concert. It runs all the time. And people come in and sit, and they read the program notes, and then they listen, and then they leave. They drink some beer, and things like that. And this will happen every weekend for the next 2 months. There's a composer on the weekend, and Friday and Saturday, his music is presented. He normally presents himself through a video, and then you can listen to the music being performed, and Anton will perform much of that.
Because I asked Daniel yesterday, do you really call it an Acousmonium? And the answer was, the Acousmonium is, could you repeat the answer, Daniel?
I don't remember what I said.
Well, never mind. I say, if you call it an Acousmonium, that's an Acousmonium.
It's an Acousmonium, yes.
I love his attitude.
It's my question is often when I made a conference or I was teaching, my question to the students was, what is music? And knowing that we have in our mind very old conceptions of music. Music is the art of combining sound.
That evolves in time.
Certain sound, not all the sound. So, as the same answer I gave to the Acousmonium, music is all what you call music. So it's the composer who decides what is music. The audience may like it or not. The audience will maybe say, no, this is not music, this is whatever. But the composer decides this is music. This is a modern concept, very important. So if you call it an Acousmonium, it's an Acousmonium. My worst experience as a composer was I was invited to London to an art gallery to make a conference and a concert. So I got there. The gallery was 3 meters long and 3 meters wide. It was like a small cube where you could put 5-6 people only. And so I made my little conference, and then when we were preparing, so I said, but where are loudspeakers? Oh, here they come. And they brought 2 tiny computer loudspeakers. And that was the worst concert of my life.
How did you make it?
I played a couple of things only. I reduced what I had planned to play. I played for 5 minutes and say, okay, that's all for today. Thank you very much. No, but here it sounds nicely. It sounds very nicely. I mean, the quality is very good. The ambience is quite dry, so you can listen. It's like I like to call it a listening chamber. And a listening chamber with a small Acousmonium inside. Mm-hmm. And the idea of Acousmonium is when you have some way to control the sound. If you have a mixer. It has, let's say, 48, to be ambitious, faders. If you're playing a mono piece, you have 48 possibilities. If you're playing a stereo piece, you have 24 possibilities. But if you're playing an 8-track piece, you have only 6 possibilities of combinations, if you want all the sounds to be there. So here we have 8 tracks. Yesterday my works were on 8 tracks. It was perfect. In the next weeks there will be some works in stereo.
Exactly.
So there we can perform. I have 4 possibilities, plus the mixing up of sounds. So there we get already into a performance. And a performance means the person who is in front of the Acousmonium has to make decisions. Where the sound will go, how we will combine different things. And the thing we are doing is that there's like a presentation of the music with the performance, and this is recorded. The movements are recorded. So it can play back automatically doing the same movements. And then it becomes more a listening chamber.
So it's always a specific pleasure, it's a kind of Beginning is always exciting.
Challenge.
Absolutely.
Okay. Okay, my friends, have a nice work and see you sometime in the future. Bye-bye.